For those who don't know, before my Genshin content popped off, before my Touhou content popped off, before the dark times, as most people would say, I've been an Xbox player since 2005, ever since I got my first original Xbox. For the most part, in terms of game output, I've been playing some bangers here and there, like Jet Set Radio Future and Blinks, Halo, Fable as well. In recent times, however, there's been a sentiment. The brand has been trying so hard to compete with others, it's starting to feel like they lost sight of why Xbox became as popular as it did back then. I even made an entire video on what the Xbox is missing in terms of what sorts of games that we're looking for, what sorts of games that the Xbox Series X needed. And I stated that in terms of games, we need games that are out there, games that are experimental, games that are essentially that prioritize fun over everything else. In some cases, they have been doing it. And thanks to games like Hi-Fi Rush, I feel that they have answered at least one of them. With a game like Hi-Fi Rush, in my opinion, they have at least done something right. But more often than not, I feel that games like Redfall, Halo Infinite, and a lot of other games that have been coming out over the past 5 years or so hasn't exactly met the expectations of what Xbox fans want, what Xbox fans deserve, and the such. Between Redfall and the Activision Blizzard deal, that there's a high likely chance that it might not actually happen anymore. I feel that for the first time in such a long time, I feel that it's one of the worst years that they've ever had. And this is including the Xbox One launch. So it's come to a point where Phil Spencer has come to Kinda Funny Games, to their podcast, that just to address what exactly has been going on, what they're feeling, what's the point, what's the course of action moving forward. As someone who is an Xbox fan, as someone who's been sticking with the brand since 2005, I want to see what's going through Xbox's mind, what's going through Phil Spencer's mind when it comes to hearing this kind of news that Redfall isn't up to expectations, where the Activision Blizzard deal might not be going through as they wanted to. So with that said, this is the kind of reaction video that I don't think my audience wouldn't like all that much, but it's something that I really want to see. It's something that I really want to put my thoughts and feelings towards. And if you happen to like these kind of videos, leave a like, and consider subscribing for more stuff like this.
What the heck is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Kinda Funny Xcast, your home for all things Xbox here at Kinda Funny. Of course, I'm one of your hosts, Snowbike Mike, and today I am joined by both of my gaming dads and one very special guest. You see him in the middle if you're watching or if you're listening. It's the head of Xbox, Phil Spencer, joining the Xcast today. Phil, we'll start with you. What up, homie? How are you?
Truth be told, I've had easier couple of weeks. It'll be a good discussion today. I'm always happy to come on.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
You guys do an amazing job talking to the community, keeping it real. So it's an honor to be on with you guys.
Thanks, Phil. Of course, you have been on a number of Kinda Funny content, but this is the first time you have joined us with the Xcast here with the Green Team. So we appreciate your time and being here with me and my two gaming dads. Of course, I'll go around the room. Paris Lilly, how are you today?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. And as you already said, thank you, Phil, for coming on this episode. Greg Miller, instead of going on your show, finally he is on the actual Xbox show for Kinda Funny. So I'm very excited and appreciative of that. Looking forward to the conversation.
Big deal. Gary Whitta, you have a green juvie today. You're feeling the green.
Yeah, this kiwi straw is not my favorite flavor, I don't think, but it was the only one you had in the fridge. You know, the price was right, so I grabbed one.
You love a free energy drink?
You know me, I don't care what it is, if it's free.
And to be fair, who doesn't want free?
We got a really fun
Who
conversation
doesn't want free?
and discussion.
You're crazy if you don't think you want
you
free.
and the team. I see you got your book. Why don't you plug that book really quick?
Oh, no, I didn't bring this in to plug it. I just had a spare copy. I was going to give it to someone. But no, Gundog, we actually had a small change in the publishing date. Comes out August 1st. You can pre-order it right now on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere quality books are sold.
I love that. You're just
Yeah.
bringing the book around now. I like that.
Just
You don't
carry
want
it
to
around,
promote it.
yeah.
You just carry the book
Yeah.
around. All right. Good for you. I like that. Well, of course, this is the Kind of Funny Xcast. We post each and every Thursday at 6 a.m. West Coast, Best Coast time on youtube.com/kindoffunnygames, podcast services around the globe, and of course on roosterteeth.com. Don't forget, we are now Epic Games partners, which means you can support the team in a brand new way. If you're buying games off the Epic Games store, if you're upgrading your look in Fortnite, Rocket League, or Fall Guys, don't forget to use our Epic creator code Kind of Funny at checkout. And of course, we love to shout out those who support us
Did not know that.
over on Patreon to help keep the lights on here in the spare bedroom. If you're over on Patreon, thank you for, of course, watching live with multiple of our shows. We're not doing this episode live, but thank you for your support. And thank you to our Patreon producers for the month of May, Delaney Twining. Thank you for your support. This week, the Kind of Funny Xcast is sponsored by Honey and Rocket Money, but myself and the team will tell you all about that in just a little bit. Let's get to the show. We get to hang out with Phil Spencer. It's going to be a fun time together. Phil, let's just jump right into it. And it's a tough way to start this episode. It's my birthday this week, and I didn't want to have to do it like this. But, Phil,
Oh, no.
it's been a tough week in the Xbox universe. As you know, of course, the CMA kind of blocking our acquisition of Activision Blizzard King, and Redfall coming out to poor
Who says
reviews
our?
at the launch.
Who says
Let's
our?
start off at the top. Phil, let's talk about the CMA and, of course, this Activision Blizzard acquisition. How are you feeling about this? What should be the overall mindset for Xbox gamers when we look at this after months and months of conversation?
All right, here we go.
Yeah, we remain confident. Obviously, the news from the CMA, which for those not tracking all this, is the United Kingdom's regulatory board on acquisitions to block the acquisition. We'll be appealing that. That's our plan. We continue to work with the European Union. We'll continue to work with the FTC. I think there are like 14 jurisdictions all up. We're working on approval. I think we have 9 approvals so far. They've defined a market of cloud gaming that, in my mind, doesn't really exist yet today. But they have a point of view that maybe we have a lead in a market that is just forming, and that this content could somehow prohibit others from competing in that market. But we'll appeal. We stay on it. The company remains very, very committed. We think Activision Blizzard King is not our strategy, but it is an accelerant for our strategy.
And they have been trying out methods here and there with trying to appeal to the various countries of that this isn't exactly a monopoly. In fact, over the past couple of months, I've been noticing that they have announced their partnerships with various other companies, various streaming companies, such as Nvidia, and there's a lot of other companies that aren't off the top of my head right now. But again, it isn't with a lack of trying. They're trying their hardest to trying to appeal to various. I'm trying to not say outlets, but that's the only one that comes to my mind right now. because that's not what they are. Regulatory entities. There we go. That's the one I'm looking for. I can't believe it took me this long to find those words. God, I'm horrible at this. Can't you tell? But for the most part, they are working together with these regulatory entities and see if they could find a happy ground. They see if they could find a happy see if they could find a balance between the two. See that Microsoft gets what they want, and the regulatory entities won't have to worry too much about there being a monopolization.
I am pleased to hear that, of course, as a big fan of many of those gaming franchises over there. I'm looking forward to seeing this deal go through, and I'm glad to hear that you and the team are still hard at work.
How exactly do I feel about the Activision Blizzard deal? Because I have commented on it once, and that was it. If the deal goes through, then there's no doubt in my mind that this is going to be one of the biggest gaming deals to ever exist. With that said, however, considering the games that are on Activision Blizzard's portfolio, it's on the one hand, I'm not that interested in in a lot of in a lot of Blizzard's portfolio. The only exception being Overwatch, but Overwatch is Overwatch, so there's that. And then there's a couple of games that I'm very curious about if they ever do make a comeback, because for the past 5 years, it almost feels like that. Well, not even the past 5 years. I'd say about 10 years or so. Activision feels like it's been nothing but Call of Duty. In fact, it feels like all eyes and manpower are on nothing but Call of Duty. I do understand why. It's one of the most profitable. It's one of the most profitable franchises in the world. So I don't blame Activision for putting all of their eggs in one basket. But because of that, it feels like they're neglecting their other franchises as well. Minus Crash Bandicoot and I guess Tony Hawk. But 9 times out of 10, when you think of Activision, you think of Call of Duty. So if this deal goes through, I want to see if Microsoft can delve into the publisher's portfolio and see if they can make a couple games out of it here and there. Like, let's say, now I'm personally never a fan of Hexen, but thanks to a YouTuber friend of mine, I've been slightly interested to see what would come of a modern take of Hexen. Though I have heard that there's an upcoming game by EA Originals that would help satiate that feeling. But more than anything, I just want to see a continuation of the Blur. I feel that game has the potential to be a fun experience. As someone who played Blur back in the day in 2010, in fact, I'd say that as weird as it sounds, Blur is one of the few games, one of the few reasons why I actually bought an Xbox 360. I know there's a treasure trove of Xbox 360 exclusives, and the one that gets you to buy a 360 was Blur, a multi-platform racing game. I was a weird kid back then. Don't judge me. In all honesty, though, I am very curious about if Microsoft gets this Activision Blizzard deal done, then I want to see them delve into their portfolio and pull out a lot of games that were left in the dust, that were left behind during the Xbox 360 era, and even before the Xbox era.
Been a tough road to talk about each and every single week, kind of falling apart. But
it's always the
happy to hear
Brits, isn't it, Mike?
We're
always the fly in the ointment. We just got to rain on everyone's parade.
It's a tough one, Gary. Of course, we got to move on to the next one. Phil, of course, Redfall has released from Arcane Austin, and it's been a tough release week for that, coming out to low reviews and a lot of disappointment from many fans. Can you talk about that? What is your thoughts right now as we head into the first week of this game being out?
Yeah, man, I'll start. I'll hit Redfall, but I'll just say all up. There's nothing that's more difficult for me than disappointing the Xbox community. I've been a part of it for a long time. I obviously work on Xbox, head of the business, have a lot of friends, get a lot of feedback, and just to kind of watch the community lose confidence, be disappointed. I'm disappointed. I'm upset with myself. I kind of revisit our process. I think back to the announcement of 60 frames per second, and then we weren't shipping 60 frames per second. That was kind of our punch in the chin, rightfully, a couple weeks ago. And then seeing the game come out, and the critical response was not what we wanted. And it's disappointing. And so kind of pick myself up. What can we learn? How can we get better? One thing I'll fight is kind of what went wrong. There's clearly quality and execution things that we can do. But one thing I won't do is push against creative aspirations of our teams. Then a lot of people will say, hey, you've got teams know how to do one kind of game. Just force them to go do the one kind of game that they have a proven track record for. And I'm just not a believer in that. Maybe that means I'll under-deliver for some of our fans out there. But when a team like Rare wants to do Sea of Thieves, when a team like Obsidian wants to do Grounded, when Tango wants to go do Hi-Fi, when everybody probably thought they were doing Evil Within 3, I want to give the teams the creative platform to go and push their ability, push their aspirations.
Well, for the most part, he's not wrong. When people think about Rare, they think about Banjo-Kazooie, Conker's Bad Fur Day, GoldenEye 007, Perfect Dark, a lot of the, even Donkey Kong Country. So I don't blame people for thinking that Rare has lost their minds when making Sea of Thieves. I've already had my thoughts and feelings on Sea of Thieves a long time ago. It's one of those games where if you want to have fun, you gotta have friends. It's one of those games that you gotta have friends to even have fun with this game. But my question being regarding those kind of games is, once you do have the friends to play this game, another thought would occur. There's a underlying question that one has to answer. Is the game fun because the game is fun, or is the game fun because your friends make it fun? That's the underlying question that I have with games like those, and it's not something that I'm particularly interested in. With that said, I understand why Sea of Thieves is a popular game. I understand why Sea of Thieves is a fun game. I'm not going to hold it against anyone that really loves the Sea of Thieves, because I understand why the game is fun. Personally, it's not something that I would be particularly interested in. And it's the same thing with Grounded. Maybe Grounded I might have a better chance with playing that game because there is an underlying story behind it. Then again, though, I did play it on Xbox One, so maybe my opinions might change if I play it on a Series X. And as for Hi-Fi Rush, I mean, dude, Hi-Fi Rush is it's like my dream game. Like, y'all have no idea. It actually hurts me inside just to not play that game on YouTube, because I want to focus on these other games. That plus, well, I mean, those videos haven't exactly been the most popular ones that I've ever outputted, but I am having fun. I am having fun with the game. Like, it's one of those games that I really wanted on Xbox in a long time. I feel the last time I've ever had this much fun with this style of game was back when Sunset Overdrive was new. That is nearly 10 years. Nearly 10 years. It's crazy to think that a game like this could exist nowadays, but it does. And I'm happy it exists. And I feel with games like Sea of Thieves, Grounded, and Hi-Fi Rush, it's those kind of games that, for some, I don't feel too fond about because of the aforementioned reasons. But if it's something that the developer is passionate about to create, if it's something that the entire team wants to create from the get-go, then who am I to take away that happiness, right? And that's something that we should all strive for. That is something that we need to do. We need to let the creatives do what they want. Otherwise, if they just get stuck with the same game over and over and over and over again, then there's a high likely chance that they will feel burnout and they would just quit development altogether. It's better, in my eyes at least, it's better for them to strive for what they want to pursue than be stuck with the same menial task over and over again.
But I also need to have a great selection of games that are continue to come that surprise and delight our fans, and we under-delivered on that, and for that I apologize. It's not what I expect, not what I want, but it's ours to deliver.
So following up on that, Phil, so again, I appreciate the transparency on that, but there is a second component to this. And as you may or may not know, I talk to a lot of people in the Xbox community because I want to understand, what people are excited about, what they're frustrated about, things like that. So kind of sticking on this conversation about Redfall, but it's kind of a bigger general question as well. And I kind of want to read directly from this so I make sure I get it crystal clear. So what goes into the decision to delay a game when you launch it feature incomplete, or there's a bunch of technical issues? Obviously, we've seen recent examples around the industry. Redfall and Halo Infinite are two that stick out in my mind for Xbox. We obviously have seen the review scores. Clearly, we've had the opinion that the game should be delayed. we know every developer wants to ship the best game that they possibly can, but
Despite how you feel about a lot of these games that have come out in the past 5 years or so, hell, even the past year or so, like Jedi Fallen Order, this game, Redfall, I don't believe it for a single moment that developers want to intentionally release a broken product. Usually with situations like those, it's got to be at the top. It's got to be management in some form. I refuse to believe that developers want to release a broken game.
from your level, what's the balance there on when to ship a game that may be feature incomplete or have some technical issues, or just simply give it more time and delay it?
Well, I think those are, and I'm happy to go very deep on this. I think if I think about a team's execution on a game, we had a creative vision, and did we realize that vision through the game that we created? That's not a delay question if the answer is no. Like, you can't take something that you started on. This isn't a Redfall specific conversation,
Right.
but we will build games that review in the high 80s, and we will build games that review in the 60s. I mean, it's just kind of part of being in game publishing. And if you're afraid of that, then you shouldn't be in the entertainment business. You shouldn't be in the games business. That said, every time we deliver something below our own internal expectations that surprises us, we should check our process. I don't look at the review scores on Redfall, and there are quality issues, and we're working on those. But I think there's a fundamental piece of feedback that we get, that the game isn't realizing the creative vision that it had for its players. That doesn't feel like hey, just delay it. That feels like the game had a goal to do one thing, and when players are actually playing, they're not feeling that thing. They're not feeling the creative execution of the team. When a game needs to be delayed, what we did with Halo, we did with Starfield, we did with Redfall, because the production timeline is saying we have this vision and our production timelines don't get us to the completion of that vision, we do delay games. We do that. Learning about the quality, I've seen them. I know there are bugs in Redfall that's launching, but when I look at like the crash rates on the game, because we get all the telemetry of everything that's happened, it's not out of proportion for a game that has just launched. It's kind of in the pocket of what we would expect. That's not to deny any of the animation, streaming of texture bugs, the AI bugs that we've seen. We will go work on those. But when I look at the review scores of this game, it's did we have enough of creative differentiation in our core idea, and did we realize that creative ambition? I'm a huge supporter of Arcane Austin. Their track record is awesome. I love a lot of the great games that they've built. This is one where the team didn't hit their own internal goals when it launched. I think it's maybe a little simplistic to just say, hey, if you would have just delayed it 3 months, the core creative of the game would have delivered on something that was different than what it was. So I look at them at different camps. If there's a production timeline issue, we've been open to delaying. If we just have more bugs than we should have at the end of a game, we're open to delaying. At some point, we have to have a creative vision and put the game out, and reviewers and players will tell us what they think.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, of course. Please, Gary.
Absolutely.
So I have just a couple of small observations and then a question. First of all, I want to give Phil props for coming on here
Give him
today
props, Gary.
and talk just for a minute about why,
It does
I
take
admire Phil.
It honestly does take some balls for someone like him to speak frankly about the situation of Redfall and the CMA block for the Activision Blizzard deal. So I have to at least commend Phil Spencer just to come up on the show, because I don't think someone like Jim Ryan would ever do something like this. I'm an Xbox guy, and I miss Sean Layden. I miss him quite a lot, because I feel that for someone like him, he really loves his job.
Because he and I have been here before. Back in 2020, during the pandemic, when I was doing Animal Talking, Phil, you'll remember this. Phil was booked to come on my dumb Animal Crossing talk show. And then after he was booked, the news came that Halo Infinite was going to be delayed and would not ship with the Xbox Series X and S. And it was you'll remember, it was a big deal. There was a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth and people rending their garments. And I was fully prepared for the other shoe to drop. I was waiting for a call from Xbox PR, from Jeff, your friend of mine, Jeff, over in Xbox PR, to say, Phil's not going to be able to come on the show live because, it's a big mess right now. We don't want to put him in the firing line for that. And Jeff called, and I thought, here it is. Here comes the other shoe. And he was like, Phil just wants to know, like, when's the tech rehearsal? Like, it's going ahead. And he came on a live talk show and took a bunch of tough questions on a really tough subject and took it on the chin. And I've always admired him for that, it would have been very easy for him to pull out, and he didn't. He came on and he's doing it again now, and I salute Phil for that. The other point I want to make is that every time, there may be some Sony platform warriors out there right now crowing about the fact that Redfall has underperformed. Just want to point this out as a creative. Every time somebody takes a big bet, especially a big AAA bet on an original idea, a new IP, and it fails, everybody suffers. It's bad for everybody because it makes it that much harder for the Phils and the Jim Ryans of the world, the big, the creative, the decision makers, to take a chance on them. Oh, but the last time we did that, it didn't work. Like maybe let's just make a sequel to the next thing, or let the algorithm tell us what to do. So every time somebody takes a risk on something new, and especially if it involves something different in game design, let's try something that has been done before and it doesn't work, it hurts everybody. So I just want everyone to be clear, this sucks for everybody. And I see it in my business, I see it in Hollywood, I see it in film and television. It's why so much content is so generic and derivative and formulaic, because everyone's afraid to take a risk. And when something new succeeds, it's good for everyone. When something new and original fails, it's bad for everyone. So I just want to acknowledge that this is like a big shit sandwich, and we all have to take a bite, including the Sony people, including everybody.
Gary is spitting facts. He's not wrong when it comes to content on not just the gaming, but in movies and TV shows, hell, even YouTube content as well. It's come to a point where developers and Hollywood execs would look at their portfolio and say, okay, what exactly are we going to do with our slate for the next few years or so? What's going to be on the pipeline? Conversations we usually go like this. Well, we had this franchise that did pretty damn good back in the 80s and 90s or so, maybe even the 2000s. Why don't we go and bring that back and see what we do with it from there? We could bring back the original people or not. We'll just go, like, it doesn't matter. Like, all that matters is the name itself sells. So take that name and then run that ball, because it's guaranteed to at least have some level of success. However, in the past few years or so, even name recognition, it can't even guarantee success. I mean, look at Saints Row. Look at the Saints Row reboot. That one did not even like nail their minimal expectations. It just goes to show that even like names don't mean much if you don't even provide the quality it deserves. And then you take a look at something like Resident Evil 4. Yes, you can. Yes, you can use it. Yes, the name itself does sell, but thanks to games like Saints Row, it's usually never a guarantee. But because that the developers took their time with the game, they injected with the love and care it deserves. That's where the game sells gangbusters. Like, in fact, if I recall correctly, it's the Resident Evil 4 remake is on track to being one of the best-selling Resident Evil games ever. That's kind of like where we're at in terms of creativity. We're currently in this spiral of reboots, remake, rehash, whatever. Just make sure that the name is front and center. Something that the masses can recognize.
Specifically this is a long time. Specifically with a question for Phil, I want to talk specifically about Redfall. When you say that you're disappointed in the reaction, that to me suggests that the reaction was something different than what you were expecting, what you were hoping for. But I know that when these big AAA games, they get subjected to all kinds of internal testing. Focus groups come in. There are third-party companies that will come in and even write like mock reviews or come like hit detection out that will tell you, here's what you can expect the press to make of your game. So usually you've got a sense of what the game is how it's going to be received before it's released, so you can be prepared for it. So Phil, when you say you're disappointed, does that mean that you thought the game was going to be better received, or was it in line with expectation? How surprised were you by the reaction, or how, like, internally, how much do you know? I feel like this one, people we know the game it has problems. Like, to what extent was this different from what you expected? And also, and sorry, I know I've been talking a long time. And the second part of that is, when a game is released now, it's not like the old days when a cartridge was shipped in a box and the release of the game was the end of the game's like development cycle. Now it's just the 1.0 release is just a point on the roadmap. To what extent, given that what we're talking about here is not just 30 frames, but design issues, things that may be more conceptual, to what extent do you think, or are you committed to continuing to work on the game and getting it maybe a year down the road, Cyberpunk, No Man's Sky? We've seen these redemptive stories in the past. To what extent do you hold out hope that you can still get the game closer to where you wanted it to be at launch? I know that was a lot.
No, well, at first I thought your words about creative ambition of teams, you especially, I mean, you've lived this, you've done this, are very well said and very spot on. So thank you for that. And that's why I love your voice in this community, because you've created, you've seen kind of ups, and as anybody in the industry, we've all seen downs. And on the score, we do mock reviews for every game that we launch, and this is like double digits lower than we thought we would be with this game through our mock reviews. And that's what's one of the disappointing things. Like, we would never strive to launch a game that we thought was going to review in the low 60s. It's not part of our goals. If you look at our review scores over the last year, it's not a defense at all. If you look at the review scores over the last year, I think the teams have done a better job in upping the level of quality of the games that we've shipped. Some of those games first shipped on PlayStation, but still, when I go through the list of the games, you still have to build a game, you still have to ship a game. And this game was significantly below our internal metrics in terms of where it actually reviewed. But that's not on anybody but us. Like, we have to own that. In terms of our commitment to the game, absolutely. The team at Arcane is on taking the near-term feedback. We're still working on the 60 frames per second. We have a good timeline for that. We're committed to getting that done. And we're going to continue to work the game. I think we've shown a commitment to games like Sea of Thieves and like Grounded to continue to go and build games. But I also know that these games are $70, and I'm not gonna I'm gonna take full responsibility for launching a game that needs to be great. I think what I have with the Xbox community, what I am a part of, is a team. There's still questions that pop every so often of how committed is the company to this category. When are we just going to push Xbox out of the market? There's a lot of Twitter firing of Phil right now, which is fine. I'm way overpaid for the role I have anyway. So,
okay, well, at least he admits that. At least he's aware of the position that he's in.
Like, I get that's my responsibility, but we will remain committed to the game and the players as long as the players want to go play games. And that's my commitment to the community. I'm kind of at a low point right now in terms of my delivery on that commitment to the community. But it very much stays. I want to support the team. I want to support the creative ambitions of the teams, and I want to support the players. And we let a lot of people down this week with the launch of the game, but we will continue to strive on. You have to, right? That's what creative is about.
No, you absolutely do. And to kind of start transitioning this into hopefully more happy news, but I do want to address something, around that. Obviously, today you announced the Xbox Game Showcase, which will be happening this June. And obviously, there's going to be a lot of new reveals and surprises that come out of that, which is great.
One could only hope. I know for a fact that there's some games that are in the pipeline that will be revealed on that show. Obviously not Starfield. That's going to be happening after the show, because they did announce a separate, I guess you could say, a separate show dedicated to Starfield. Honestly, I think Forza Motorsport is the only thing I'm thinking about that could even be on there. And I do believe an Elder Scrolls expansion, unless they already showed that off. I could be wrong, but that's what's at the top of my mind right now. There's still the no-shows like Fable and Perfect Dark. A lot of us are still waiting for that. It's been like that for nearly 3 years or so. It feels like it's been like that for 3 years. I don't doubt Playground Games' ability to create fantastic games. They made the Forza Horizon games, and in my opinion, aside from Blur, aside from Blur, I feel that the Forza Horizon sub-series is like my favorite racing series. It's like one of the best ones out there. So I have no doubt that Fable will be great. Like, because Playground Games, for some reason, they are development wizards. I mean, it's shocking to me that Forza Horizon 5 was able to play on my GTX 1080. That is crazy to me. The fact that it even runs as well as it does on PC with a graphics card like that. If the creative side of things will be able to deliver on what made Fable so special. And the same thing goes with Perfect Dark. I've been following the development closely for Perfect Dark, and I don't know what to think of that project anymore. It's like, one moment I'm hearing that development is just moving along smoothly, and then on the other end, I've been hearing that there's been some contentions here and there, that there's some disagreements about the direction that Perfect Dark is going. So I'm like, okay. Well, Perfect Dark fans have been waiting for 15 years. What's another 15 though, right?
But I am going to bring it back again to another common theme that I do hear through the community. And I've actually said this to you in the past, but it's about communication coming from Xbox. I do feel back in 2021, you did a fantastic job with communication, which arguably has been the best year during this current generation of Xbox. Obviously, we know that 2022 was a light year for Xbox as far as releasing titles. Now,
very much. That's putting it nicely.
During the showcase, you had the 12-month plan. You didn't necessarily deliver on all the games coming.
No, we didn't deliver. Not necessarily. We didn't deliver.
Absolutely. So my point of bringing that up is this, talking about some of the lessons learned that come out of that. And obviously, even with not every game making the 12 months, going back to, again, game development, things happen. Things aren't always going to come on time. But as we go into this showcase, one of the common themes that I hear is I don't know enough about things that you've announced in the past, like even more specifically going back to 2020. And I'll just run down a quick list of it. Vowed, Perfect Dark, Everwild, which is something we really don't know that much about. Fable, State of Decay 3, Contraband. Obviously, we've seen a little more in Hellblade 2. We have studios like inXile and Compulsion Games that we know are working on things, but we haven't seen any real updates on that. So I titled all my questions Balance and Communication, because even in this, it's like, what is that balance on when you show something that is going to be years down the road, and kind of that cadence of providing updates along the way. And obviously, as we go into this showcase, not that you need to reveal anything specific here, but what were some of those lessons learned from last year's showcase that you'll bring into this one?
Yeah, and you might try to get me on positive. I'm not in positive mode this week, so I'll apologize for staying in kind of cranky mode. But
that's fair.
In terms of lessons learned, and I'll even go back to the Redfall videos on IGN of showing videos of the game running at 60 on PC, at the point knowing that the game was going to run 30 frames per second at launch on console. Like, we have to be transparent about what we're showing, that what we're showing is representative of what our console customer, our most committed customer to our brand, financially committed, what they're going to see, what they're going to play, and that transparency just has to get better. And I'm not pointing at anybody but myself, right? I guess at some point I will have enough knocks against me that it's somebody else here. But that I think it's transparency in what we're building, what our aspiration is for the game, what it's going to look like, what the features are. And it drives me crazy when we self-inflicted wounds of kind of putting things out there of communication that's confusing or misleading about what the actual end product is going to be. So you can try to take me to positive space. I'm just not in that headspace right now. That said, when I go and I look at Showcase, and I'm not going to try to oversell Showcase here, because if I were on the other side of watching this, it's like, hey, after Redfall, I'm going to put my hands on the controller, and that's what's going to take to kind of prove to me. But that's not what Showcase is. So um, I'm very enthusiastic about Showcase. We're going to announce some things that people haven't seen, some new games. We're going to give updates to some of the things that were on your list. The other thing that gets me really excited is when I look forward over the next quarters, which has always been my focus of how do we get a big game out every quarter at quality, that things are lining up finally after some of the slowdown through COVID. I'm tired of talking about that. But I can now see that we've got games coming every quarter that I think will surprise and delight our customers. We still have to deliver on the creative. We still have to deliver on the technical. Not every game we ship is for everybody. We know that. Like, I don't want to build, I'm not trying to build the one game to rule them all.
That's a fair statement. That's honestly a fair statement that Phil is putting on here, because as much as I do love, I love the hell out of Hi-Fi Rush, but even I can admit that I don't think this is the kind of game that people want at all. Because for all intents and purposes, I feel that Hi-Fi Rush is a bit of a niche product. But that said, there's been millions of people that have played it. But I do understand why people are not into Hi-Fi Rush. It's something that's a little more skill based. It's something that's a little more along the lines of nostalgia for the PS2, GameCube, and Xbox era. I know that I'm missing out on more things to say regarding Hi-Fi Rush and how niche it is, but that's more or less a general idea of what Hi-Fi Rush is exactly. Much like how Sea of Thieves and Grounded isn't my kind of game, I know for a fact that as much as I love Hi-Fi Rush, I don't think it's the kind of game that everyone can get into. So I understand what Phil means when he says that through the upcoming quarters of what we'll be experiencing in terms of Xbox output, there's bound to be games here and there that won't appeal to everybody. It won't appeal to, it won't be the one game that will be the epitome of what would constitute as a bestseller. Well, maybe not a bestseller, more like something that would appeal to everyone in a general sense.
We will have different creative takes and we have a very diverse portfolio when you think about the stuff that Microsoft Game Studios builds. But I like that. I think for what we're trying to do as Xbox, which isn't to mimic any of the other platforms out there, it's create our own brand and identity. The diversity of what we build, hopefully, will end up being a strength. But we have to do it at quality. We have to do it on time, and we have to show people what they're actually going to see. We have to show gameplay, and I think I'm kind of beyond that. Like, we've got to put great games in the hands of our players. There's nothing else.
If I could follow up on that, and I apologize, I do not want to dominate the conversation, but I make sure I want to follow up on the point of everything that you just said.
Do what you got to do, man. Do what you got to do.
I've been a big believer in what Xbox has been building since about 2016, right? Xbox Play Anywhere, Game Pass, what you're doing with the Series X and S, just the cloud initiative, everything. I love all the services and the marketing message that you present to the community. But to your point, and for me personally, I have Game Pass. My kids play it. We all love it. But you even mentioned, delivering quality experiences every quarter, things like that. That's the sentiment that we get from the community right now. That's the sentiment that I even have of, it's great to talk about these things. I think we've been talking about them ad nauseum. It's like, when are we going to get to that point of actually delivering these experiences? I just ran down those games. There's 20 something studios. Forget Activision. Xbox Game Studios, what it is today. There's more than enough studios and titles out there that we're all anticipating. And I think that is the common frustration that I see out there from people, that it's like, we're tired of hearing wait till next year. And I know you know that, but
I know.
It's like,
I know.
Yeah.
That is a fair thing to say, though, because for the past few years or so, Microsoft has stated that, well, not just Microsoft, but just Xbox and Phil Spencer mostly. We've been hearing the whole thing of, okay, this is the game that we're going to show, and hope you get excited for the next year or so. And then we wait for next year, and we hear that it's going to be delayed. We hear next year, and it gets delayed again. And again, And again, that's the growing sentiment regarding the Xbox community, that we've been waiting and waiting and waiting to see these games come out in some way. A lot of us are just tired of the constant delays of games. And to be quite honest, I don't blame developers for this. It's mostly because well, I mean, we were in a friggin' pandemic, so I can't really put the blame on developers or publishers. It was just a unfortunate timing that just happened. And because of that, scheduling has to go like way the F back just to be sure that everything gets released on time while taking care of your employees. It's hard to say if I should feel mad about it or not. Like, are you gonna get mad at the plague just because your favorite game isn't launching within the year or so? Normally, I would say no, not really. But at the same time, it's been about a year since. It's been about 3 years since COVID happened. We should be at a point where developers and publishers should have a plan to be sure that everyone works at a certain pace. Games either come out too early or come out like within the next 5 years or so. And it's like, we're kind of tired of hearing the whole spiel of wait till next year, wait till next year, wait till next year, we'll have more information. Wait till next year, we'll have more information. I'm a very patient person. I'm like one of the few people out there that's like, okay, you know what? It's fine. I'll wait for at least another year. I have plenty of other games that I could play in the meantime. I have games like Hi-Fi Rush, like the massive, even currently, I am playing through Mass Effect Legendary Edition. I'm playing through, and I'm going to be playing Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic later on once Mass Effect 3 is finished. I have Genshin Impact. I have Honkai Star Rail. I have a bunch of other games that I'm playing in the background. Not just on the YouTube side of things or streaming side of things, but also in the background as well. I'm also playing Fortnite. I'm also playing Marvel's Avengers just to see if I can complete that and just witness how bad it is exactly. And hell, I'm even reviewing games on the Xbox 360, just playing through those games as well, even capturing footage like Vanquish and Bayonetta. I really have no issue with games being delayed. I buy games. I buy new games years after they become after the honeymoon period has finished anyway, so I don't really have that much of an issue. It's one thing if a game was announced a year ago and then it turns out today is going to be today it's going to be delayed by another year or so. That's one thing. It's another thing if a game that was announced back in 2020 turns out that you're going to be waiting a long time, 3, 4, 5, 6 years later. That's when the game finally comes out. Even my patience is starting to run a little thin as an Xbox fan. So I'm glad that Paris was able to bring up that hard topic of, well, one of the few hard topics of, no, honestly, it's not just Paris. It's also Gary as well, just trying to come up with pretty hard questions as for someone who's essentially the face of Xbox.
This year started out well.
Yeah,
I
yes,
thought
it did.
Developer Direct was received well. The team did a really good job, I thought, with the messaging around to your point, around setting expectation. And I will even say, yes,
Hi-Fi Rush was the
rooting for
best
the
part
home
of that
team here,
of
but
that
I'll
direct,
say
honestly, only
over-delivering
because
on
of
expectations of that show
only
versus
because
what it
of
was.
the
I think
sorry about that. Honestly though, that Developer Direct, let's not kid ourselves. Hi-Fi Rush was likely the best part of that Developer Direct, because not only was it a game that Xbox was in dire need of in terms of style, but it's something that we did not expect. A shadow drop of a full game. That's what's so surprising about that announcement.
I think the drop of Hi-Fi to say, hey, if you've got Game Pass, you don't even have to buy the game. Like, just go click. People loved Hi-Fi. something we don't talk a lot about. That same month, Age 2 on console shipped.
Mm-hmm.
Truth be told, more people are playing a bunch of people are playing Hi-Fi and Age 2, but Age 2 actually has more players right now. But all the fanfare goes to the highly rated kind of new Hi-Fi. I get that.
That's fair.
I know the review scores on Minecraft Legends. Minecraft, I think, always reviews somewhere kind of different than the top. But if I look at the reaction, I think we've already had over 3 million people playing.
great.
I saw
Mm-hmm.
its launch week. It was the #1 retail game on the Switch in Japan, which isn't always where Microsoft sits.
That's shocking.
In terms of sales. So I feel like momentum is building, and then something like Redfall happens, and the Xbox community should demand a lot from us as a team. Where we sit inside of Microsoft, we've got the resources to do better. 2022 was, as you said, a very light year, I think is what you said. I might have other words for it. And then
other harsh
2023 we
words, I'm
started
assuming.
well, and this was a knockback. But it's our job to go and deliver on the next games. I can only look forward, right? I can sit here and wallow in my own frustration. But all I can do is say,
Frustration,
I'm gonna do better
sweat,
tomorrow than I
tears.
did yesterday, and continue to support the teams and continue to grow. But yeah, I think it is ours to prove that. I can say now, and everybody can already stop. I don't want to hear what Phil has to say about the future, and I kind of fully respect that point of view. That we've got Starfield coming, we've got Forza coming, we've got Hellblade coming. Like, we've got collections of games. I'm seeing very good builds of Avowed and stuff. Like, I can see it. But until you have a controller in your hand and you're smiling from playing our games, none of my words should matter.
I don't have any real issue with trying to announce things early. I have no qualms about that. But what should matter is the final game that you play on your hands. That's the only thing that, like, look, the trailers for stuff like Fable and Perfect Dark, they're good. They're honestly, they get the point across. But to me, as much as I do get excited, in the back of my mind, I have to keep reminding myself, none of this matters, none of this matters, none of this matters, none of this matters until I actually get to play the game on my hands. Until I see the day that I get to play on a controller. Okay, I know this is the Xbox 360 controller, but bear with me on this. Unless I get to play the game on my hands right now, then trailers don't even matter all that much, especially cinematic trailers. I don't get too excited over cinematic trailers. But with that said, if it's a trailer that I am of a game that I am looking forward to, then sure, I will do that. But until it's playable on my controller, it don't matter all that much.
Paris was just talking about what have you learned. And I want to go back to that in the case of Redfall, even just as a case study for things like this when they happen in general. Because Redfall wasn't even the only game to stumble out of the gate this week. Look at the PC version of Jedi Survivor. What a mess. Unacceptable that game shipped in the state that it was. And they must have known. It was, oh, geez, the game has bugs. No, you knew, and you shipped it anyway. So EA Respawn, for example, even on a massive title like that, it's going to be a Game of the Year contender. We all know that. But like the PC version was unacceptable. My understanding is the PlayStation version's a bit of a mess as well. So we're still seeing this stuff happening on the regular. Just in general, when things, I'm fascinated, as you might know, I'm fascinated by the subject of failure because I've experienced a lot of it in my own career and in my personal life as well. And I think about it a lot. The #1 quote that I stole from a person much smarter than me, I talk about it all the time when I talk about writing at creative seminars and things like that, is failure is not the opposite of success, it's a part of it. But that's only true if you can get past feeling sorry for yourself when something fails and sift through the rubble and start figuring out, well, what can we learn? What can we learn from this failure? What can we take from this? What is teachable? And so I wanted to ask Phil, both in general and in the case of Redfall, I know you said you were going to work towards kind of turning the game around, but like, do you have a formal process? And what does it look like in the case of Redfall when something doesn't meet expectations? Is it something you get into right away, or do you wait for the dust to settle? What is the post-mortem process? What is the what went wrong, and how do we prevent this from happening again process look like at Xbox?
Yeah, it's a great point, and I think I love your quote, Gary. I might lift that from you. people don't have to care about this, but I'll talk about it. When we acquire studios, there's games that are in development when we acquire a studio, and then there's things that are either really early in development or not even conceived yet. And I think we need to improve on engaging in games that are midway through production when they become part of Xbox. I do think there's a different expectation for a game and even a team when you've been third party and all of a sudden you become part of first party. There's a different expectation in terms of how you're going to perform on our console. I think there's a different competitive set when people look at what this game is and the other games that they're going to say, hey, I want this game to feel as competitive as this other game on another console platform in our case. And we didn't do a good job early on in engaging with Arcane Austin to really help them understand what it meant to be part of Xbox and part of first party, and use some of our internal resources to help them and kind of move along that journey even faster. So we kind of left them to go work on the game. They're a very talented team. I love that team, and I still do, and I will totally bet on them to do another great game. But when like Matt Booty and Jamie Leader, who's running ZeniMax, and I sit down, I think we could engage earlier with our different studios. And I do think there's a difference when we come in when the creative's already set on a game. That's not washing our hands of any of the creative. Every game we ship from our teams is an Xbox game. And so it's a full responsibility for it. But thinking about how our internal processes of dev assistance, even some of our internal ATG resources, what's the Advanced Technology Group, and how those work with our internal teams, I think we can do a better job with our internal teams. We did a better job with Starfield. Again, nobody should believe it until they're playing the game, but that game was earlier on in production, and it was easier for us to kind of swarm a bunch of people to go and kind of help with some of the technology on our platform and ensure that we're going to ship a quality experience there. And we should have been there for Harvey and the team earlier. I think that's on us. And then through the process, it's an Unreal game. We have a bunch of studios that have done some really great work on Unreal over the years.
Like the Coalition.
And I think we were too late to help in that when they had certain issues that they were working through, which any team will. It's nothing to do with the specific engine. But we have a lot of experience, and we needed to get on that earlier with the team. And we didn't do that. And that's not an excuse. You asked just to kind of diagnose. So when the 60 frames per second issue came up, we were definitely diving in. We had people from the Coalition and people from Rare and stuff looking, both teams that have done some really great work with Unreal to help us build a 60 FPS plan. But obviously that was a plan that had to be in place last fall in order for us to really be in a position to have it at launch. And I take that as learning, as painful as it is. But as you said, it's part of getting to success are those learnings and that diagnosis. There's a bunch of other stuff I could go into, but then we end up with kind of dev doc, which I'm happy to do, but yeah.
Well, Phil, we don't have much time with you, so I'm going to go around the table, give everybody one final question for Phil. I'm going to rattle off a couple quick ones with you, Phil. Of course, we talk about 60 frames, 30 frames. Should Xbox players expect a clear message this summer with Starfield with 30 and 60 frames? That's a big lesson learned, as you brought up. Should we expect that answer as clear as day?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a great one. Another one, you see a lot of conversation, of course. I want to praise you and the team for really elevating the PC side of this Xbox ecosystem. I think we've seen a lot of great strides in that. But when you see the community talk about the console side of things, do you think you've lost the focus or maybe put too much onto the PC side? Do you think that the console is still getting the console love that it deserves, whether it be the homepage update, achievements, of course, looking forward and using the power of this next gen? Do you think you guys have lost that focus, or is it still there, and can we see more love on that side?
Well, we'll definitely continue to focus on making our console experience as great as it can be. I like the homepage refresh and some stuff. I will say, this might be disruptive as well. We have a different vision. Paris talked about this. It's play the games you want with the people you want anywhere you want. We want Xbox to be something that people who buy our console can feel like they're a member of. Obviously, who are playing on PC, who are playing on cloud, that they feel like they're full members of our ecosystem. Game Pass players can play on many different devices, and we remain fully committed to that. We're not in the business of out consoling Sony or out consoling Nintendo. There isn't really a great solution or win for us. And I know that will upset a ton of people, but it's just the truth of the matter is that when you're third place in the console marketplace and the top two players are as strong as they are and have in certain cases very discrete focus on doing deals and other things that will that kind of make being Xbox hard for us as a team. That's on us, not on anybody else. Our vision is that everybody who's on console has to feel like they have a great experience and they're a first class citizen. They've invested a ton in our platform, but we are not in a position, and I see it out there. I see commentary that if you just build great games, everything would turn around. It's just not true that if we go off and build great games, all of a sudden you're going to see console share shift.
On the one hand, that is kind of false, but then again, there was the Dreamcast. There's a lot of great games on Dreamcast, and that didn't exactly help out a Sega by any means necessary.
In some dramatic way, we lost the worst generation to lose in the Xbox One generation, where everybody built their digital library of games. So when you go and you're building on Xbox, we want our Xbox community to feel awesome. But this idea that if we just focused more on great games on our console, that somehow we're going to win the console race, I think doesn't really lay into the reality of most people. Like 90% of the people every year who walk into a retailer to buy a console are already a member of one of the three ecosystems, and their digital library is there. This is the first generation where the big games that they're playing were games that were available last gen. When you think about Fortnite and Roblox and Minecraft, like the continuity from generation to generation is so strong. I see a lot of pundits out there that kind of want to go back to the time where we all had cartridges and discs and every new generation was a clean slate and you could switch the whole console share. That's just not the world that we are in today. There is no world where Starfield's an 11 out of 10 and people start selling their PS5s. That's not going to happen. So what we have to do, and we have this unique vision because we see what creators want to do. Creators want to build games that can meet players on any screen. People play with their friends regardless of what other screen they're on. And the console is the core of the Xbox brand. There's no doubt. So like we will stay focused on making sure that console experience is awesome. But I know some people want to hold us up of just being a better green version of what the blue guys do. And I'm just going to say, like, there's not a win for Xbox in staying in the wake of somebody else. We have to go off and do our own thing with Game Pass, with the stuff we do with xCloud, and the way we build our games. Sorry, I was a little long-winded.
No, that was perfect. And unfortunately, we do have to say goodbye to you, Phil. I know that we have a hard out here, but I want to end it with something positive, Phil, because I've gotten cranky, Phil, this whole episode, and I freaking love you, and I appreciate you being on and being hard with us, but I do need something positive out of you, Phil. So before you leave, tell me and the Xbox community something positive that you're looking forward to, that you're playing, anything fun to bring a smile to your face.
Dude, I'm an optimist. Like, you know, I will always see, I'll use this for you, the gap between the trees. I'll always see the fresh POW. Like, this is why I'm here. I love the games that are ahead of us. I'm having a great time playing the games that are available in Game Pass today. I look in Ravenlock coming, Benedict's here. I just love playing video games. One of the things I am excited about is the ROG Ally, something I've got my hands on, if people have had a chance to play with that. And I just love the fact that here's another device that people are going to get to go experience great games on, whether it's your Steam Deck or that or your Xbox. You know, I see the growth in video games. I get to spend time with creators who are excited about the opportunity that they have. I get to go play some amazing games, some of those in Game Pass, some of those not. And I just think the gaming space has never been more diversely creative than it is right now, and it's a privilege to be a part of it.
I love hearing that. Paris, end us with this episode. What do you got to say? And let's get out of here.
Yeah, just a quick statement as we get out of here. First and foremost, Phil, thank you for doing this. This is clearly not the conversation we thought we were going to have when we scheduled this, but we do appreciate your candor and just being 100% honest about the current state of what's going on with Xbox. I am hopeful in the future we can have more conversations about what ID at Xbox is doing in their initiatives, Game Camp New Orleans, things like that are more positive and enabling more creators, because that's what I really wanted to talk about in this episode. But as we go into June, I am looking forward to the showcase. I am looking forward to the reveals that are coming. And, you know, I still think the future is bright for Xbox and Xbox Game Studios and what you'll have to present. This is a bump in the road, but I still think the future is going to be bright. So again, thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks, Paris.
All right. Well, on behalf of my two gaming dads, thank you, Phil Spencer, for joining us on this week's Kinda Funny Xcast. Of course, thank you all for tuning in and hanging out with us. We will see you next week, and Team Xbox will see you in June for the big Xbox Game Showcase and, of course, that deep dive into Starfield. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll catch you back next week.
I commend Phil Spencer. I really do. Had it not been for Phil Spencer taking over the position of head of Xbox from Don Matrick back in 2013, 2014-ish, there's the high likelihood that the brand would be in a much worse situation. Best case scenario, it would be in a much worse situation. Worst case scenario, the brand probably would never have been anywhere. Like, it'd probably go the way of Sega. I have to at least commend Phil Spencer just trying his damnedest to turn the boat around and to much better seas. They still aren't in the greatest space at all. It's something that Xbox should fix. It's something that they should focus on. Just release games in a timely manner. And considering that we're currently in the process of moving on from COVID, it's something that the brand should strive for now, like now more than ever. And I'm glad that this podcast exists. It's to my understanding that this podcast was meant to be something else entirely, but considering the news of the CMA block and Redfall being in the state that it is right now, I'm glad that Phil didn't, like, he could have easily just said no to the podcast, much like in the same way that he would have said no during that Animal Crossing talk. But he didn't. What he essentially did was put on his big boy pants and just talk to the masses, or at least as many people as possible, about his feelings, his thoughts and feelings on the situation at hand, and just answer some tough questions. And to be quite honest, these are some tough questions. As someone who is in the limelight of the Xbox brand, it's a tough decision. It's a tough situation for him to talk about certain aspects of the brand, because you don't want to. Because here's the thing: I don't know much about PR, but the one thing you should never do is talk down to your constituents. You should never talk down to your customers. You should never put the product that you're representing in a dark in a negative light. So I commend Phil for being honest about what the mistakes of Xbox and even Phil has done in the past few years or so. So I do at least commend him for that. But I get the feeling that we've had this kind of conversation before. Well, not we specifically, more like the conversation between Xbox and its fans. I feel that we've already had this kind of conversation before. If you really do mean what you say, follow up with what you have to say. Don't just say it, just do it with actions. To me, actions speak far louder than words. I just hope that Phil and Xbox just delivers on what they want, on the vision that they want for not just Xbox, but for their games as well. Because it's something that they really need to work on in terms of trying to deliver on the promises and experiences that they want their fans to play. Whether or not that the Xbox event in June will be any indicator of the future of Xbox, whether or not it's going to deliver on what they want to set out, I want to believe. I really want to believe. But nowadays, it's just getting harder and harder to do that. And I'm an unabashed optimist for like, just trying to, like, I'm optimistic to a fault. Like I know that there's people out there that say that I am like too optimistic just for things to happen and all of that. Like, I remember a comment on my Blue Protocol. I don't remember if it was a video or if it's a comment on Twitter saying that a game like this would probably be canceled, likely. But then lo and behold, but then I told them, hey, if that's what you believe, then sure, yeah. If that's what you believe, then I'm not going to hold it to you. For me personally, I'm looking forward to something like Blue Protocol. And then once the announcement came that the game was going to be releasing within the year or so, I actually don't remember how long. I actually don't remember when it's supposed to come out exactly, but it is coming. It is coming out at some point. So the dream is still alive, and I still retain that optimism that it'll come out like in a timely state. You would think with a game like Anthem, I would learn my lesson, but sometimes old habits die hard, right? So it's that kind of optimism that keeps me going for the Xbox brand in general. Only because I grew up with the system, I grew up with the brand, so do me. But with that said, thank you very much for tuning into the video. Really hope you enjoy yourself. I really hope you enjoy the conversation. What are your thoughts on the podcast itself? Do you think that Phil has said enough, or do you think there should be more to it? Like, what exactly do you feel about the Xbox brand being in the state that it is right now? Are you looking forward to more games that are coming out, or do you think this is going to be the final straw? Let me know down below, and you can be as harsh as you want. I personally will read every single comment that'll be on this video. Like all of my other videos in the past, I will read every single one of them. Don't you worry about that. So let me know how you feel down below, and if you like this video, leave a like, leave a comment, and consider subscribing for more videos like this on the way. Thank you very much for tuning in, and well, until then, take care.